welcome to Suzuka. Welcome to your F1 Live post-race show. And in a roller coaster of an afternoon, Max Verstappen has won the Japanese Grand Prix and is a two-time world champion, albeit in slightly confusing circumstances, but we can confirm Max Verstappen is the champion for the 2022 season. Pietro Fittipaldi joins me on this post-race show to unpick all that we've seen. At one point, it looked like the race was going to be called off. So heavy was the rain, so poor were the conditions. We got running out on track, and we are now standing here with a world champion. Pietro, your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, crazy. At a certain point, I didn't think it was going to restart. Even the team PR, he came to both Kevin and Mick and said, listen, it might not restart. We're going to have to go and speak to the fans. But then, boom, suddenly restart, and then now Max world champion. Unbelievable.
It is extraordinary stuff, isn't it? And we are taking nothing away from Max by saying it was slightly confusing toward the end with how the points were given out. He had an unbelievable race. The margin of victory by which he'd won, the battle behind for second, third, fourth was brilliant, but Max was streets ahead out in front.
Yeah, for sure. He won by over 30 seconds, dominated in a wet race, was under contention for the lead into turn one on the start, held it on the outside, got good traction.
That was some move, wasn't it?
Kept the lead, and then restarting the race, difficult conditions, was able to keep it clean, and then, like I said, over 30-second lead, you know, on the win, and nobody can take this championship away from me. Fully deserved it.
Yeah, pretty extraordinary stuff from Max Verstappen today. Such was the dominance of his victory, and indeed the dominance throughout the season as well. 12 wins now to his name. Behind him, though, Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez were locked in a battle. Perez just creeping up lap by lap, and then the battle really kicked off in that final lap, and is specifically through the chicane. We'll head now to the studio. Sam Collins has all the analysis.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. There's been huge confusion about how Max Verstappen has won the World Championship. The reason he's done it is Article 6.5 of the FIA sporting regulations for the 2022 Formula One season. That's the section that contains the different points increments depending on who's finished where in a race that's been shortened. So why were full points played out in a race that only reached half distance? Well, the reason being is that regulation states those limited point increments are only introduced if a race cannot be resumed, which means this is the final result for the Japanese Grand Prix. Max Verstappen has won the World Championship. He's got 366 points. There's only 112 points left available to win in the 2022 Formula One World Championship, and he's more than that ahead of his teammate Sergio Perez. And the reason Max Verstappen has won the World Championship is all down to this moment at the final chicane between his teammate Sergio Perez and Charles Leclerc. Leclerc got a bit too aggressive defending, went off the track at the chicane, and then got a 5-second penalty because he didn't give the position back to Sergio Perez because the race was already over. And that is where the World Championship was decided. Max Verstappen had already won the Grand Prix by that point, and it was all over for everybody else trying to win that title. So Max Verstappen, World Champion. Full points have been applied, Article 6.5 of the sporting regulations. That's what everybody's going to be talking about in the newspapers tomorrow, Laura.
I know, my goodness me. We thought it would be simple, didn't we? But it wasn't. Thank you so much, Sam, for that explanation of exactly what happened. Full points awarded. And Max Verstappen, if you're just joining us now, is a two-time world champion. He has been crowned here in Suzuka, the 12th F1 driver to be crowned at this legendary circuit. We're going to have guests galore, I'm hoping, to come through and give us their reaction to what we've seen this afternoon. We're hoping to speak to Esteban Ocon very soon as well about that battle with Lewis Hamilton. But I'm going to speak about Sebastian Vettel. Sebastian. I mean, maybe he was Sebastian today. Sebastian Vettel. I mean, he was really quick to get onto those inters, wasn't he? He was one of the first, alongside Nicky Latifi, to risk it.
Yeah, I think that was the key, obviously, to their result. And going into the race, we knew that the intermediate tires had a good chance of being better than the wets. But when we had the safety car restart, we thought it's so wet that if we put intermediates, it's too early. You're gonna start aquaplaning, and it's too risky. So those guys that took the risk, put the inters on first, had a massive advantage, not only for the tire performance, but as well you get clean air, because when the safety car restarts, everybody's together. The spray is even worse, so you can't see. Just by that, you're losing time because you don't know where to brake. It's harder to look at the corner. So he stopped, got clean air, and got better tires, undercut everybody, and got a great P6.
Yeah, a brilliant race, a brilliant strategic move from Aston Martin. Sebastian Vettel, P6. Let's hear from him now. He's in the pen with Lawrence Barretto.
Sebastian, I know it wasn't such a great start, but at least the end was pretty good, right? In terms of inspired move to take the Inters really early doors, and you must be pleased.
Yeah, very pleased. I mean, obviously it started really well because I had a phenomenal start, but then nowhere to go. Had a lot of aquaplaning on the left, lost the car, touched Fernando, spun, was last. So it looked like that was it. But then we had a great recovery. I knew we spoke about what happened, and together with the team, I think we had a plan going into the sprint race at the end, and it worked. So we had enough pace as well to survive. It was a bit of a confusion because I had lost the radio, had the pit board saying 1 lap, backed off already a little bit, then Fernando was still pushing. I was a bit confused, so kept racing, and we just managed to keep 6th. But I think they changed the duration of the race in the end. I don't know. So I think the main thing today, to be honest, is the fact that nothing happened in these conditions. We had a tractor on the car that should never have been there in these conditions on the wrong tires, which we are forced to put on because the extreme wet is not good enough and too slow. So there's stuff that we need to learn and do better next time.
Great stuff. And just finally, as a former world champion, Max, he just found out a little bit delayed that he's world champion today. What do you make of the year that he's had?
Well, I mean, it was very dominant. It was very clear, I think, after the first couple of races that it's going that way. But he still need to do the job. He didn't lose the focus at any point, so well done to him and to the team. I still know, a lot of people there, so I'm very happy for them.
Great stuff. Thanks, Sebastian.
Sebastian Vettel, of course, the last driver to be crowned world champion here in 2011. And that first race start happened so long ago. Pietro and I almost forgot the contact that we had between Vettel and Alonso. We can now take a look at that as well. Because, I mean, the start was extraordinary. The first couple of laps were pretty chaotic. And this just one of a few incidents that we saw. Vettel here just being squeezed by Alonso, turning in.
Yeah, basically you can't see anything. So then Alonso went to open the line to get a better radius for, the first corner. Didn't see him, boom, side contact, and he went off. It's crazy that I honestly, like you said, we forgot about that because so many things, happened throughout the race. But crazy to see that it was a pretty heavy contact. He even said it on the radio, was able to continue, no problems with the car. And solid finish.
Yeah, absolutely. Just reversed it straight out the gravel, straight back onto track, and lucky for him that he did, because it's valuable points today for Sebastian Vettel and indeed for Aston Martin as well. And it is last time here at Suzuka, a track that means so much to him. We can now hear from the other driver entangled in that one, Fernando Alonso.
Fernando, really tricky conditions out there, initially in that first phase, but also the second phase. And it was an inspired move, I think, to pit towards the end and give yourself a little bit of a chance.
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult to read today. The conditions and also the visibility was the biggest topic. We stopped very late every time that we decided to pit. At the beginning, I was alone with the full wets, and I lost a couple of places. And then at the end, we made an extra stop, but only 6 laps to the end, so it was not time really to make a difference. So we ended up in the same position. But some fun out there. Very chaotic for everyone. Even the last lap, we didn't know if it was the last lap or not. So I think it was difficult for everybody.
And I don't think Max, who is world champion, a little bit later on as well. You're a 2-time world champion as well. What do you think it will mean to him?
Yeah, obviously, congratulations to him. Amazing season. And even today, with all this chaos, I think at the beginning, nobody knew if he was world champion, and now he is. So that's probably the summary of the afternoon.
Great stuff. Thanks for that, Dave.
Yeah, some canny work there from Fernando Alonso with that late pit stop. And at the time, I sort of looked at it and thought, 8 minutes to go, and he's just pitted and fallen down the order. But he managed to then pick off drivers and get himself back up. And P7, of course, where he finished.
Yeah, because the delta was so big, the intermediates actually have a pretty high degradation. So at the end, I think some of the drivers who pitted were about 4 to 5 seconds quicker than the guys who didn't. And if you just had that gap where you don't lose that much track position, which I think he had, it was worth the risk. And yeah, but it's crazy. Like, usually on the wet tire, even intermediate, you don't have that much degradation. But in this race over here, maybe with the high-energy circuit being Suzuka, even the intermediates and the wet tires, you had this degradation, which, mixed things up in the race.
Yeah, I mean, it's already an abrasive track here, isn't it? Maria Isola saying to me earlier in the week that they were expecting high degradation. I don't think they were quite expecting the sort of chaos and drama that we've had here this afternoon in terms of a race start, restart, resumption, suspension. But effectively now we have had a race in full, and Max Verstappen, if you are just joining us, has been crowned world champion. We are talking Alpine, though, and of course, in that battle between them and McLaren, Alpine has taken another big step forward today because Esteban Ocon was P4.
Yeah, and I think he stayed ahead of Hamilton, right? The whole Ocon stayed ahead. It was unbelievable driving because I think Hamilton was much quicker, but Ocon was just able to position himself so well on the exit of the corner. Every time he just traction out of it, and I don't think Mercedes had the top speed to be able to overtake. I think in the 130R, Hamilton went on the outside a couple times, but as soon as he'd open up, get away from the toe, the car would just stop gaining on Ocon, and yeah, he couldn't make the move.
There you go, in real time. We just got a scrum surrounding Sebastian Vettel, who's just finished in the media pen, which is just on my left-hand side here. And he's now moving out. He's got a nice samurai headband on as well. Sebastian Vettel very much loving his time here at the Japanese Grand Prix. But you're right, and I think Mercedes are very honest about the fact they were lacking straight-line speed here. And I mean, that must have also played a factor in why they simply couldn't get past that Alpine.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think that definitely played a factor, not taking any credit away from
Absolutely.
Esteban because his driving was fantastic. But yeah, sometimes you opt for a more, higher downforce, which you would expect here, thinking that there would be DRS in the race to overtake. But with no DRS in the rain, if you don't have any top speed, you have too much drag, it's just going to be too difficult to overtake.
And of course, Esteban Ocon with a brilliant performance today, a superb defence indeed to maintain that P4. A new teammate for him next season. We are waiting for him to leave the pen and come and join us, we hope. But Pierre Gasly, of course, has moved to Alpine. A tricky race, a tricky day for him today, but down in P17. But oh, here we go. Pause that, hold that.
Mega job, man. Honestly, mega job.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Esteban. P4, a brilliant, brilliant race. Some defence from Lewis Hamilton as well. Talk me through it.
Some attack from Lewis Hamilton, you mean? Yeah, he's been pressuring me every corner. That's the way I would describe it. I was looking more in the back than looking ahead, but I've enjoyed that race. I just spoke to him, and yeah, we said we had more fun than any other drivers here because the whole race we were battling. Yeah, it's been great. It's been a fantastic weekend. I think to score that amount of points, which was looking like 0 at the start with the weather, I think it's very satisfying.
Here are some of your best moves, Esteban. It looked a lot of fun from the outside. I'm sure it was a lot of fun to be in the midst of it.
It's very close. I didn't think it was that close, but yeah.
And I mean, in these
nice
conditions too, as well, the visibility that certainly Lewis would have had behind you.
Yeah.
But you guys kept it clean. It was great battling.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, especially in the beginning, I think with the spray and the amount of spray he got, it was definitely hard to, to stay close behind. But they were much quicker today than us. They had probably less tire degradation as well. So we need to review what we can do better. Because on the normal race, I think it would have been hard to keep them behind. But today, we can be satisfied as we've done it.
And talk me through the afternoon as a whole as well, because we obviously had a few laps to start with, which were difficult, very difficult for all drivers, and the visibility looked like a real issue out there. And then we had this huge delay, and then suddenly you've got to go racing again, and you're toe-to-toe with Lewis Hamilton. The emotions, the mindset, the adrenaline, it must have been all over the place.
Yeah, I felt like, okay, that's it. We're not going to race. It's going to be a spa number 2. And I was almost giving up. I was like, yeah, it's not going to get better. I was looking at the radar every 2 minutes, and it was, not going any better. So to just, jump back in the car, get your mind back in, and just seeing the conditions as we were going, I was like, okay, yeah, this is going to go. Yeah, I think that was well dealt by the safety car drivers and the medical car team because I think they got what we needed to be racing.
Absolutely. And also, of course, more valuable points for Alpine in this battle that we are focusing on between you and McLaren. You're ahead of both of those, both you and Fernando.
Yeah, exactly. So far, so good in that regard. I think we've, as I said, it was a matter of time until we could show what the car was capable of. And yeah, today we were able to score a good amount of points. We need to keep going in this direction.
High downforce track here, of course, but it looks like those upgrades are very much working that you've had on the floor.
They are. It's very encouraging. But, we need to keep feet on the ground and see where we can get in Austin.
And, of course, we have had Max Verstappen as well, crowned double world champion. Your reaction to that?
Yeah, I just congratulated him because, a lot of people, we say, yeah, it's the car, whatever, but honestly, when you see his races starting from last, going back through the field, and beating everyone, winning the race, this is exceptional. I think he's been on top of his game and he definitely deserves it.
Let's look ahead to the US Grand Prix. considering the pace we've seen here, considering now the car has been reliable for this weekend? What are the hopes there?
Similar. I think we want to finish in the points with both cars again. Hopefully loads of points. It's going to be a bumpy ride with these new cars, so I look forward to see what we can achieve. But it's a great track and a great atmosphere always in the state.
Well, many I spoke to before this race had predicted an Alpine podium. I have to say I predicted an Alonso podium, but you were very close.
That's not very nice.
I know, sorry, Esteban. I'll predict an Esteban podium next time.
Okay.
But thank you so much, and
Thank
well
you.
done today. Brilliant to see.
Thank you very
P4
much.
for Esteban
Thank
Ocon.
you.
Thank you to him. Oh, there we go. Yeah, didn't predict the correct Alpine up there, but a P4 for Esteban Ocon. Brilliant stuff. We can now hear from the man that he was battling out on track. Both Mercedes drivers, in fact, starting with Lewis Hamilton.
So Lewis, you gave it everything against Esteban, and it looked like you tried everything you had in your armoury. Just didn't quite have enough, I guess, to try and make that pass stick.
We're just too slow on the straight, yeah. So whenever I was on the power, we were falling behind. So actually through corners, I was okay, but yeah.
And just a word on Max. You obviously fought him strongly for the title last year. He had a bit of a delay today to find out if he was world champion, but he's gone and done it, and he's dominated this year.
Yeah, I think Red Bull obviously did an amazing job this year with their car, and so big congrats to the whole team and to Max.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
George, really tricky afternoon out there. First in that first kind of part of the race, and the second part of the race with the pit stop, you didn't seem too pleased with the team strategy.
Yeah, I mean, we need to review what went on. I was right behind Lewis and double stacking. I was just going to lose all the positions. Yeah, not really much more to say. Very frustrating afternoon. Probably could have fought for P5. It was quite enjoyable out there, making some good overtakes. But we need to sit down with the team and see what we could have done better, because I think that was probably at the time was not the right thing to do.
How difficult were the conditions in that first phase when you went out?
I mean, the grip was fine, but the problem was we couldn't see anything. The spray was so bad. You didn't know where the dry bits were. You didn't know where the puddles were, where the rivers were. So it was literally just a visibility. So I don't know whether with these new cars they bring up more spray. Obviously, there have been so many more improvements with the racing. Perhaps this is one of the downsides. Who knows? But for sure, the rivers here in Suzuka circuit need to be improved, because they're the exact same as they have been for about 4 or 5 years now, in the same spots.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was bad luck for George Russell. Was it bad strategy? It's always worth taking a look at the tyre strategy, and that's something I love doing at this point of a race weekend. Actually, I was under the impression we weren't going to see many pit stops in this Grand Prix, and it turned out we definitely got some, because the intermediates came into their own almost straight away in this event. Now, George Russell, he pitted and double stacked with the Mercedes just at the start of that intermediate period, and that slowing down in the pit lane really cost the British driver against his teammate Lewis Hamilton, who was right here. He got in at the right time. But what Mercedes actually did get wrong is they didn't take a note out of Alpine's book. Take a look at Fernando Alonso. He stayed out for a bit longer. He's actually down here, isn't he? He stayed out a bit longer on the full wet tyre and didn't lose the time. But the Alpine team then didn't have to double stack their cars, and they got to run a bit deeper. So George Russell could have stayed out for another lap on the wet tyres and managed to keep his position, and probably would have finished maybe a couple of places higher, possibly even beating Alonso with that late race pace. But what would have made it harder for Russell to beat Alonso was the late race pace, because Alonso had this fantastic idea of stopping for a new set of intermediates right at the end of the Grand Prix. And the reason he did that is he felt that the performance had gone off by quite a lot. The cars were doing 147, 148 laps towards the end of the Grand Prix, put on a new set of intermediates, and he was straight down into the 1-minute 44s and came screaming up through the field, overtook loads of cars. Fantastic bit of driving from the Spaniard as ever. A few other drivers saw that opportunity as well to take those intermediates late in the race, and that was the reason the fastest lap point was not awarded to anybody in the top 10. Zhou Guanyu, he managed to get the fastest lap by taking those new intermediates earlier in the Grand Prix, earlier in the race. So that worked out quite nicely for those drivers. But the wet tyres, they didn't get much of an outing, did they? They weren't on the cars for very long, 5 laps only, and the amount of spray they were kicking up was one of the reasons that the drivers didn't really want to get back going to full race conditions. But just with this pit stop strategy, there is one little moment in the race I wanted to point out. A driver who gambled everything on trying to win the Grand Prix and ended up finishing miles down the order. But had there been a safety car or another red flag when people had started switching to the intermediates, one man decided to take all of the gamble to try to get to the front of the field and possibly win the Grand Prix. Mick Schumacher, he was the last car to finish the Grand Prix, but for just a brief moment, this is all for those German fans, Mick Schumacher led the Japanese Grand Prix for all of about 15 metres, but he led a Grand Prix in his debut season, and that will be one for the statisticians to remember. So Mick Schumacher had a great opportunity. The Haas team had a bit of a gamble. It didn't pay off, but I think they did the right thing. Had the red flag come out at that point, had there been a safety car, the Haas team would have been really, really good. So it's good to see that there's some opportunities for strategy, even in a race where you're not obliged to take any pit stops at all. Going back to you, Laura, in what I think is quite a dark and chilly paddock.
You are absolutely right, Sam. It's dark. It's not too chilly at the moment, although it has been. There are a few spots of rain that are threatening once again here in Suzuka, but for now, Pietro and I staying dry. And Sam just saying there that it was a bold decision by Haas not to pit Mick Schumacher, to put him on to the Inters, that everybody else suddenly dove into the pit lane and got on the car. But Mick just holding out to see if there was going to be a red flag or a safety car. There wasn't, but it was worth the gamble, do you think?
It was worth, yeah, I believe it was worth the gamble because if a safety car would have come out and then they would have stopped the race, you're suddenly there in the top 3. So I think once they made the decision to, you know, take on that strategy, you have to go all the way. You can't bail halfway because then it's a lose-lose situation. So unfortunately, yeah, he stayed out. The safety car didn't come out, and then he lost all the positions. And I think what triggered everybody to start stopping was when Latifi was one of the first ones to stop, I think together with Lando. They went out, and then Nicholas started putting purple sectors, and everybody's like reacted to that. Oh, we got to stop this lap because the intermediates are definitely quicker. But for sure, yeah, if a safety car would have come out, maybe it could have worked. You know, the team tried. I think, you know, they did a good job in trying that. And yeah, unfortunately, it didn't go our way.
It didn't. P18 for Mick Schumacher, P14 for his teammate Kevin Magnussen as well, so no points for Haas today. The man finished just ahead of Mick Schumacher in P17 was Pierre Gasly. A very difficult afternoon for him, and he's been in the pen with Lawrence Barretto.
Pierre, just a really difficult, frustrating, strange day for you out on track. Can you just talk me through all of those moments?
You know, we've all lost a very good friend of us 8 years ago. I think we all love Jules. We all suffered a lot with the accident that happened. And I just don't understand why 8 years later we need to see a tractor on this track in these conditions. We are risking our life out there, we give our best, but I just don't understand why we didn't wait 1 more minute to put the tractors out there. And yeah, I mean, I obviously got very scared. Carlos lost the car, the previous lap in that exact same place. There wasn't any information that the tractors wasn't in the gravel, it was on the racing line. And I passed next to it at 200 kph. And obviously I saw that if I lose a car at that time, once I realized, then I would not be standing here. You know, today I'm just extremely grateful I'll be able to call my family and my loved ones, because the outcome could have been way more tragic. And you know, I don't think it's respectful towards Jules and all his family and all of us that suffered from his loss. And I think it was unnecessary to put this tractor out there, and obviously got extremely scared. And yeah, I think we could have dealt with this situation in a slightly different way, and that's what we've been asking since his crash, not to see any tractors on the racetrack and just, you know, wait for us to get back in the pit lane in this sort of situation.
Well, I'm glad you're okay, and I'm glad everyone else is okay, so thank you very much.
all of us so glad to see Pierre Gasly and indeed Carlos Sainz as well, who had a big shunt earlier on, fine and out of their cars and doing okay. Of course, none of us ever want to see anything that will endanger the lives and the safety of our drivers. The FIA have noted that incident, and we hope to hear more soon. Of course, we'll bring that to you on F1.com, social media and F1 TV as well. I think this afternoon was a stark reminder of the risks that you guys take out there, Pietro, the risks that Formula One drivers are happy to take to put on a show for us and to race their hearts out and do what they love, but it's still a risk.
Yeah, obviously when you jump in the car, you never think about the risk. I don't think any racing driver does, but and then if you go out on track and something is there that maybe shouldn't have been or for sure shouldn't have been, then for sure you want to avoid situations like that at all times. So yeah, it was unfortunate to see what happened there today. Luckily, nothing, came out of it. But for sure, it shouldn't happen.
No, it shouldn't happen. And Gasly at that time was doing 250k behind the safety car to catch back up to the pack. But as I said, we don't want to see anything that will endanger the safety of our drivers. So hopefully we will have a swift resolution to the incident that we've seen today on track. Lawrence Barretto has joined us, who's just been in the pen speaking to the drivers and gathering reaction for what has been a confusing and crazy end to this afternoon.
Yeah, I think there was some confusion among the drivers as well, because they weren't sure whether to congratulate Max on the title or not, and how many points had been dished out. It was quite dramatic. Max doesn't win titles easily, does he? Like last year it was dramatic, this year it's dramatic as well. But I don't think, honestly, when I saw him, it sunk in. He was the last one who came through the TV pen, and he hadn't quite sunk in. I wonder because he's dominated this year and it's been coming, I guess, essentially, rather than at a risk. He's kind of already come to terms with it. But yeah, quite an atmosphere in the pen today.
Well, in flashes to Abu Dhabi last year, I am hearing that Ferrari are actually protesting the 5-second penalty, of course, for Charles Leclerc that saw him demoted to third. So we'll bring you more news of that as and when we hear it. That is the rumours in the paddock at the moment. Ferrari are going to protest today, which, of course, may switch things around in terms of points. We'll have to do the maths here, but let's hear from Charles Leclerc now.
Commiserations, Charles, obviously, firstly on the race, but obviously on the loss of the championship today. I know it was always a long shot, but still, it's out of reach now. Just sum me up your emotions.
Let's say that it's a disappointing race, not because Max won the title, because honestly that was expected. Whether it was this weekend or next weekend or the one after, it was just a matter of time before he become a world champion. And for that, a huge congratulations to him, to Red Bull for doing such an incredible season. On the other hand, looking at ourselves, we've been struggling a lot. We've done 3-4 laps that were really quick at the beginning. For some reason, we are really good with warm-up, and then it fades away. So we need to look into that and try to get better.
How hard was it in those final phases of using that intermediate tyre? Obviously, that ultimately led to you running off at the end.
Yeah, well, it was extremely difficult. It wasn't clear to me that it was the last racing lap. I thought there was 2 laps, but at the end it was the last one, but whatever. But yeah, I was really struggling. But to be honest, it's not only the last laps, it's from lap 4 onwards. I knew it was going to be a very difficult race.
Hard luck, thank you.
Well, P3 for Charles Leclerc, of course, after that incident at the chicane with Sergio Perez. It was a difficult day for Ferrari, of course. They lost Carlos Sainz early on as well, with actually a scary shunt. When I've seen different angles of it since, and there are plenty on social media, it was a pretty scary one, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Carlos was pretty scared himself, to be honest, because you could see how close some of the cars were getting to him as they were going past. He wasn't quite sure, really, when to get out of the car and when it was safe to do so. And it just showed how difficult the conditions were. I think sometimes when we watch the onboards, I don't think that's a fair reflection of what you guys see in the car. I think it must be far worse from a visor perspective.
Yeah, for sure. I think with the camera, it kind of sometimes is able to get the water away. When you're inside the car, you're sitting kind of low with all the spray that's coming out. Honestly, all the cars have the rain lights, and they're pretty strong rain lights, but sometimes when the spray is so bad, you could barely even see the rain lights when the guy is maybe 5 meters ahead of you. It gets that bad. And it's even worse when you're further behind, or further behind more cars, because the spray is even bigger. So it's always dangerous to see the car, stopped on track like that. I was actually, when it was red flagged, I was looking at Kevin's onboard with Kevin, and he was explaining how close it was. He didn't actually see Carlos so well and how close it was to him hitting him.
Yeah, it was scary stuff. We are very glad that all 20 drivers are safe and well today. We can now look at that incident between Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez, of course. Charles Leclerc has a 5-second penalty for this at the chicane, cutting across it. That's demoted him to 3rd place. Here it is. Pietro, talk us through it.
Yeah, I think, last lap going into the last chicane, Sergio was just there. He just outbraked himself a little bit. And then this move here, which I think was, it was on the limit of being clean. He was defending, he was staying on the line. Obviously, he knew Sergio was coming there, but it's difficult to say. I don't know if he actually deserves a 5-second penalty or not. It's difficult to come to that conclusion. It's difficult to say, to be honest.
It is a 5-second penalty as things stand at the moment, and indeed that was the move that has made Max a double world champion here. I mean, Charles was just losing those inters at the end, wasn't he? And Checo was just coming up on behind him, just lap by lap.
Yeah, it's been an issue for Ferrari all season, really. They can get the tyres warmed up, and that early phase is pretty good, and then they just go away from them. And particularly when you put the inters on, they've just really struggled for that. And you can see the frustration in Charles's face. I think he's making ground early doors, and then there's literally nothing he can do, and he's almost a sitting duck, just sat trying to battle. And there's only so far you can keep a much faster car behind you, and I actually think he did a pretty good job to keep him as far behind him for as long as he did.
Oh, absolutely. And I think back to Bahrain, I sat down with both Charles and Carlos, and they both spoke so ambitiously, boldly about wanting to be double world champions, both in the driver and the constructor. So I've no doubt that there'll be some disappointment today that with 4 races to go, that is not the case. But I'm going to say thank you and goodbye to you, Lawrence. Brilliant stuff in the media pen as ever, and you're off to interview Max, aren't you?
Yes, I am, for the Champions interview. So yeah, I get a nice sit down with him now. So let's hope he's excited.
Well, let's hope it's sunk in. What an afternoon here. At one point, we didn't think that we'd have a race, and now we have a world champion on our hands.
Exactly. Great stuff. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Formula 1, eh? It's completely mad.
Yeah, super crazy, but yeah, unbelievable. And I think, what Lawrence said as well, Charles did an amazing job in the driving. He defended the whole way. Sergio was a lot quicker, and it was just the last corner. It wasn't that he made a mistake. It's just sometimes the car gives out. He was, blocking, defending for I don't know how many laps, and then just at the end there, yeah, just slipped out of his hands, and it happened. So let's see if something changes, but, at the moment, Max is, world champion.
Max is world champion, that's right. But we can now hear from his teammate, Sergio Perez, finished P2 today.
Checo, that was a fine race out there. You put pressure on Charles until ultimately you made a mistake, and you kind of not only got a good result for you got the title for your teammate as well. You must be feeling really good.
Yeah, I'm really happy for that. Very happy for Max, It's, the way he drove this season has been incredible. And yeah, a lot of credit to him, to the team. Hopefully soon we are able to secure the championship, for our team. That will be massive.
I appreciate it. It obviously ended your hopes of the championship, but you must be pleased with how this year is going, especially these last couple of races.
Well, obviously I wanted to win the championship. In the beginning I was in the fight, but I had few races where the car just got out of my hands. I think we are understanding a few bits, but we have to make sure that going forward, next year I will try again to beat Max and get the championship. So yeah, I need the full support from Red Bull, and hopefully we are able to have that consistency that is needed for the championship. But for now, what a season Max has done.
Great stuff. Thanks, Checo.
Thank you.
Some drive from Sergio Perez, of course, backing up his win at the Singapore Grand Prix last time out. He sure enjoys driving in the wet, doesn't he?
Sergio, honestly, he's such a racer. I mean, ever since I remember, watching F1, he's a friend of mine, and he's always raced so well, whether it's in the dry or wet conditions. And today, just putting the pressure, and then boom, last corner, where I think nobody expected anything to happen. Leclerc, yeah, Charles went off, and he was able to clinch the second place, and as well clinch the world title for his team. So outstanding drive, super happy for him, and yeah, very well deserved race and result for Red Bull.
I'm going to let you go because you have a plane to catch, don't you? Such is the delay that we've had today. There are lots of people rushing out of this paddock to catch planes. Pietro Fittipaldi is one of them, but thank you so much as ever, both for your work last weekend and indeed today. Brilliant to have you on. Thanks, Pietro.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, the last man to score a point today was Lando Norris in P10. Let's hear from him now.
Hey, Lando. Congratulations on a point. How do you feel after that race?
Yeah, I guess happy. I mean, I lost a lot of positions in the first start. I had just a lot of wheel spin and dropped a huge amount, so a bit unfortunate, but made up for it then, really, with the early pit stop. Seemed like whoever went onto the inters earlier made most positions, so like Seb, for example, did a good job and he made a good call. But yeah, 1 point, it's better than nothing. I think I was P14 or 15 on the restart, so I'm happy. It's 1 point, it's not a lot, but yeah, it's what we got to settle for today.
How tricky were the conditions out there?
Then it was okay. The beginning, it was like you still couldn't see literally anything. The first start was too bad. I think that was obvious. It's impossible for us to describe to the viewers or to you, like just how bad it is, how scary it is being in that situation. We're going whatever speeds we're trying to go, and I mean, you genuinely cannot see 10 meters ahead of you. And if you're going at 150, 180 miles an hour, 300 kph, and there's a car stops like Carlos's, you don't see them until it's too late, basically. So it's tough. Like, I don't know what it is, whether it's we need to have some like mud guards on the tires, like something so simple, but yeah, it's impossible to drive like that. So thank God it stopped, but also happy to get it going again in the end.
Right, thank you very much.
Well, we were hoping for some Red Bull reaction. Good to hear from Lando Norris there. And Adrian Newey joins me now. We're laughing because I've just told him this is your 5th world title you've won here. 2 from Mika, Damon Hill and Sebastian Vettel, and now Max Verstappen. Your reaction to the extraordinary events that have unfolded this afternoon?
Well, I guess the biggest surprise was that we'd won, because we'd been adding it up as we were going along. We were actually debating whether we should come in for the last lap or the penultimate lap to try and get fastest lap to get the point that we thought we needed. We thought we were short by 1 point, so actually we just went up to the podium to celebrate the win. Charles very kindly came up and said congratulations to me, and I thought, okay, well, that's very nice of him, but don't quite understand. And then we saw it flash up behind the podium as world champion.
Wow, so that was the timeline then for you guys. You realised very much in real time like the rest of us.
Indeed. No, I'm afraid our accounting obviously went a bit wrong.
I mean, it's been a brilliant season. We'll take nothing away from Max Verstappen today also, because it was a huge margin of victory. It's been pretty flawless from him so far. 12 wins this year. You guys must be delighted.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think Max has obviously done a superb job with the car. I think the early races, then it was very much nip and tuck between Ferrari and ourselves. They were quicker at some tracks, we were quicker at others. But we've done, I think, with the guys and girls back at the factory, we've done a good job of developing the car and managed to get us to the point that now we can be competitive, hopefully, at all tracks.
And 2 wins as well for Sergio Perez this year, Singapore and Monaco. And today, of course, the pressure that he put Charles Leclerc under through those final laps, ultimately forcing the mistake, has ultimately been what has given Max this championship today, by points, not throughout the season.
Absolutely. I mean, I think Checo's done a fantastic job through the year. He's he's turned out to be the master of wet, slippery street tracks, as it turns out.
He has.
Again, in the wet today, he drove superbly. I think both our drivers managed to pace themselves in terms of how they used the intermediate, because we knew that was a little bit delicate, and that played into our hands as the race wore on.
How treacherous, how difficult were those conditions? What were the drivers saying to you guys over race radio, certainly in the first few laps that we saw before the red flag?
Before the red flag, then that was very tricky, and I think it was absolutely the right thing to do, to bring the red flag out, because cars start aquaplaning and then they're out of control, and that's just plain dangerous. I think the race control actually played it incredibly well today in terms of bringing the red flag out at the right time, restarting the race at the right time, so all credit to them. And it's kind of, the intermediate was clearly the tyre that was the faster tyre, so really the only decision we had to make is when we went from the extreme to the intermediate, which I think, again, once Sebastian came in and started going purple, then it was pretty obvious that was the time to do it.
That was a pretty exciting moment, wasn't it? Adrian, I'll let you go, because I'm sure you've got some celebrations to get to. I can imagine the atmosphere in the motorhome over there is pretty incredible. Congratulations from all of us. Thank you so
very
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, there we go. Adrian Newey there just reflecting on what is his 5th world title to be won here at Suzuka with Max Verstappen, who picks up his 2nd at just 25 years old. Let's take a look at the results of the Japanese Grand Prix as things stand. And it was Max Verstappen who took the win. And of course, the full points, as we now all know. Sergio Perez, P2, thanks to that brilliant drive and the pressure he put on Charles Leclerc, who finished P3 ultimately, demoted with a 5-second penalty. Esteban Ocon, a great result for him in P4, and a great battle as well with Lewis Hamilton in P5. Brilliant points for Sebastian Vettel for a 2nd weekend in a row in P6. Alonso backing things up for Alpine in P7. George Russell, P8. Nicholas Latifi, we haven't even had a chance to talk about this. His first points this season for the Williams in P9, and P10 for Lando Norris. Daniel Ricciardo, P11 just outside. Lance Stroll, a great start for him, but P12 all he can manage. Yuki Tsunoda on home soil, just P13, P14, Magnussen, P15, Bottas. Zhou Guanyu in P16, P17, Pierre Gasly, a difficult weekend for him. P18 for Mick Schumacher, and Carlos Sainz and Alexander Albon both retiring. And as we say, very, very pleased to see that Carlos Sainz is okay. But this is very much Red Bull's afternoon. It has been quite an extraordinary one. At one point, we thought this race would simply not resume. We are now standing here, and Max Verstappen has been crowned world champion for the 2nd time. It was a brilliant race from his teammate Sergio Perez to back it up in P2 as well. And we are incredibly pleased to see that all drivers, after a difficult weekend in tricky conditions this afternoon, are safe and well. Max Verstappen, a double world champion, the 12th driver to do it here at this historic track after 3 years away. It's been quite the afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us here on F1 TV. Thanks to Harry Benjamin, Sam Collins and Jolyon Palmer in commentary, to Lawrence Beretta in the pen, to Pietro, my co-host for today as well. And thank you to all of you for watching. We've still got 4 races to go this season though, so let's do it all again in Austin, shall we? We'll see you there for the USA Grand Prix.